What's up, everybody? So today, this video is going to take care of Fahrenheit 451, pages 88 through 98. And for this 10-page section, I'm calling it Mildred and Friends. And instead of any reading journal entries for this section, I've made a quiz, which is going to be just like that Beatty speech test. Okay, well, remember when Beatty came in and told Montag all about how the world was created, and I listed those 10 things that were revealed, and you guys found quotes to show that, yep, those things were revealed. This quiz is gonna run just like that. It's gonna be smaller. All right, I got 5 things instead of 10, but this is still covering 10 pages. So you might have to comb through a little bit more and pick some good quotes. All right, but I'm not even unlocking that until this video's done. So don't rush on that one. Let's take a look at these pages. This is where Mildred has some friends over, and Mildred's friends are just like Mildred. How does this world even function sometimes? I'm not sure. Anyway, so we're gonna jump in. Almost right at the top of page 88. This is right after Montag has left Faber's and he's walking back home. All right, here we go. We're going to jump right in. You could feel the war getting ready in the sky that night. The way the clouds moved aside and came back, and the way the stars looked, a million of them swimming between the clouds, like the enemy discs, and the feeling that the sky might fall upon the city and turn to chalk dust and the moon go up in red fire, and that was how the night felt. Montag walked from the subway with the money in his pocket. He had visited the bank, which was open all night and every night with robot tellers in attendance. Oh my gosh, do you realize Ray Bradbury kind of just invented ATMs? And as he walked, he was listening to the seashell radio in one ear. We have mobilized 1 million men. Quick victory is ours if the war comes. Music flooded over the voice quickly, and it was gone. 10 million men mobilized, Faber's voice whispered in his other ear. But say 1 million. It's happier. Faber, yes, I'm not thinking. I'm just doing like I'm told, like always. You said get the money, and I got it. I didn't really think of it myself. When do I start working things out on my own? You've started already by saying what you just said. You'll have to take me on faith. I took the others on faith. Yes, and look where we're headed. You'll have to travel blind for a while. Here's my arm to hold on to. I don't want to change sides and just be told what to do. There's no reason to change if I do that. You're wise already. Montag felt his feet moving him on the sidewalk towards his house. Keep talking. Would you like me to read? I'll read so you can remember. I go to bed only 5 hours a night, nothing to do. So if you like, I'll read you to sleep nights. They say you retain knowledge, even when you're sleeping, if someone whispers it in your ear. Yes. Here, far away across town in the night, the faintest whisper of a turned page. The Book of Job. The moon rose in the sky as Montag walked, his lips moving just a trifle. He was eating a light supper at 9 in the evening when the front door cried out in the hall, and Mildred ran from the parlor like a native fleeing an eruption of Vesuvius. Mrs. Phelps and Mrs. Bowles came through the front door and vanished into the volcano's mouth with martinis in their hands. Montag stopped eating. They were like a monstrous crystal chandelier tinkling in 1,000 chimes. He saw their Cheshire cat's smiles burning through the walls of the house, and now they were screaming at each other above the din. Montag found himself at the parlor door with his food still in his mouth. Doesn't everyone look nice? Nice. You look fine, Millie. Fine. Everyone looks swell. Swell. Montag stood watching them. Patience, whispered Faber. I shouldn't be here, whispered Montag almost to himself. I should be on my way back to you with the money. Tomorrow's time enough. Careful. Isn't this show wonderful? Cried Mildred. Wonderful. On one wall, a woman smiled and drank orange juice simultaneously. How does she do both at once, thought Montag insanely. In the other walls, an x-ray of the same woman revealed the contracting journey of the refreshing beverage on its way to her delightful stomach. Abruptly, The room took off on a rocket flight into the clouds. It plunged into a lime green sea where bluefish ate red and yellowfish. A minute later, 3 white cartoon clowns chopped off each other's limbs to the accompaniment of immense incoming tides of laughter. 2 minutes more, and the room whipped out of town to the jet cars, wildly circling an arena, bashing and backing up and bashing each other again. Montag saw a number of bodies fly in the air. Millie, did you see that? I saw it. Montag reached inside the parlor wall and pulled the main switch. The images drained away as if the water had been let out from a gigantic crystal bowl of hysterical fish. The 3 women turned slowly and looked with unconcealed irritation and then dislike at Montag. "When do you suppose the war will start?" he said. "I notice your husbands aren't here tonight." "Oh, they come and go, said Mrs. Phelps. "In again, out again, Finnegan. The Army called Pete yesterday. He'll be back next week. The Army said so. Quick war. 48 hours, they said, and everyone home. That's what the Army said. Quick war. Pete was called yesterday, and they said he'd be back next week. Quick." The 3 women fidgeted and looked nervously at the empty, mud-colored walls. "I'm not worried," said Mrs. Phelps. "I'll let Pete do all the worrying," she giggled. "I'll let old Pete do all the worrying, not me. I'm not worried." "It's always someone else's husband dies, they say." "I've heard that too. I've never known any dead man killed in a war." "Killed jumping off buildings, yes, like Gloria's husband last week, but from wars? No." "Not from wars," said Mrs. Phelps. "Anyway, Pete and I always said, no tears, nothing like that. It's our 3rd marriage each, and we're independent. Be independent, we always said. He said, if I get killed off, you just go right ahead and don't cry, but get married again, and don't think of me." "That reminds me," said Mildred. "Did you see that Claire Dove 5-minute romance last night in your wall? Well, it was all about this woman who..." Montag said nothing, but stood looking at the women's faces as he had once looked at the faces of saints in a strange church he had entered when he was a child. The faces of those enameled creatures meant nothing to him, though he talked to them and stood in that church for a long time, trying to be of that religion, trying to know what that religion was, trying to get enough of the raw incense and special dust of the place into his lungs and thus into his blood to feel touched and concerned by the meaning of the colorful men and women with the porcelain eyes and the blood-droopy lips. But there was nothing. Nothing. It was a stroll through another store, and his currency strange and unusable there, and his passion cold. And even when he touched the wood and plaster and clay, so it was now in his own parlor with these women twisting their chairs under his gaze, lighting cigarettes, blowing smoke, touching their sun-fired hair and examining their blazing fingernails as if they had caught fire from his look. Their faces grew haunted with silence. They leaned forward at the sound of Montag swallowing his final bite of food. They listened to his feverish breathing. The 3 empty walls of the room were like the pale brows of sleeping giants now empty of dreams. Montag felt that if you touched these 3 staring brows, you would feel a fine salt sweat on your fingertips. The perspiration gathered with the silence and the subaudible trembling around and about, and in the women who were burning with tension. Any moment they might hiss a long, sputtering hiss and explode. Montag moved his lips. "Let's talk." The women jerked and stared. "How are your children, Mrs. Phelps?" he asked. "You know I haven't any." "No one in his right mind, the good Lord knows, would have children," said Mrs. Phelps, not quite sure why she was angry with this man. "I wouldn't say that," said Mrs. Bowles. "I've had 2 children by cesarean section. No use going through all that agony for a baby. The world must reproduce, you know. The race must go on. Besides, they sometimes look just like you, and that's nice. 2 cesareans turned the trick. Yes, sir. My doctor said cesareans aren't necessary. You've got the hips for it. Everything's normal. But I insisted. Cesareans are not. Children are ruinous. You're out of your mind," said Mrs. Phelps. "I plunked the children in school 9 days out of 10. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month. It's not bad at all. You heave them into the parlor and turn the switch. It's like washing clothes. Stuff laundry in and slam the lid." Mrs. Bowles tittered. "They'd just as soon kick as kiss me. Thank God I can kick back." The women showed their tongues, laughing. Mildred sat a moment, and then, seeing that Montag was still in the doorway, clapped her hands. Let's talk politics to please Guy. Sounds fine, said Mrs. Bowles. I voted last election, same as everyone, and I laid it on the line for President Noble. I think he's one of the nicest looking men who ever became president. Oh, but the man they ran against him, he wasn't much, was he? Kind of small and homely. And he didn't shave too close or comb his hair very well. What possessed the outs to run him? You just don't go running a little short man like that against a tall man. Besides, he mumbled. Half the time I couldn't hear a word he said. And the words I did hear, I didn't understand. Fat, too, and didn't dress to hide it. No wonder the landslide was for Winston Noble. Even their names helped. Compare Winston Noble to Hubert Hogg for 10 seconds, and you could almost figure the results. Damn it, cried Montague. What do you know about Hogg and Noble? Why, they were right in that parlor wall not 6 months ago. One was always picking his nose. It drove me wild. Well, Mr. Montague, said Mrs. Phelps, do you want us to vote for a man like that? Mildred beamed. You just run away from the door, Guy, and don't make us nervous. But Montague was gone, and back in a moment with a book in his hand. Guy! Damn it all, damn it all, damn it! What have you got there? Isn't that a book? I thought that all special training these days was done by film, Mrs. Phelps blinked. You reading up on fireman theory? Theory, hell, said Montague. It's poetry. Montague, a whisper. Leave me alone. Montague felt himself turning in a great circling roar and buzz and hum. Montague, hold on. Don't. Did you hear them? Did you hear these monsters talking about monsters? Oh, God, the way they jabber about people and their own children and themselves, and the way they talk about their husbands and the way they talk about war. Damn it, I can't stand here. I can't believe it. I didn't say a single word about any war, I'll have you know, said Mrs. Phelps. As for poetry, I hate it, said Mrs. Bowles. Have you ever read any? Montague, Faber's voice scraped away at him. You'll ruin everything. Shut up, you fool. All three women were on their feet. Sit down. They sat. I'm going home, quavered Mrs. Bowles. Montague, please, in the name of God, what are you up to? Pleaded Faber. Why don't you just read us one of those poems from your little book? Mrs. Phelps nodded. I think that'd be very interesting. That's not right, wailed Mrs. Bowles. We can't do that. Well, look at Mr. Montague. He wants to. I know he does. And if we listen nice, Mr. Montague will be happy, and then maybe we can go on and do something else. She glanced nervously at the long emptiness of the walls and closing them. Montague, go through with this and I'll cut off. I'll leave. The beetle jabbed his ear. What good is this? What do you prove? Scare hell out of them, that's what. Scare the living daylights out. Mildred looked at the empty air. Now, Guy, just who are you talking to? A silver needle pierced his brain. Montague, listen. Only one way out. Play it as a joke. Cover up. Pretend you aren't mad at all. Then walk to your wall incinerator and throw the book in. Mildred had already anticipated this in a quavery voice. Ladies, once a year, every fireman's allowed to bring one book home from the old days to show his family how silly it all was, how nervous that sort of thing can make you, how crazy. Guy's surprise tonight is to read you one sample to show how mixed up things were, so none of us will ever have to bother our little old heads about that junk again. Isn't that right, darling? He crushed the book in his fists. Say yes. His mouth moved like Faber's. Yes. Mildred snatched the book with a laugh. Here, read this one. No, I take it back. Here's that real funny one you read out loud today. Ladies, you won't understand a word. It goes umpity-thumpity-ump. Go ahead, Guy. That page, dear. He looked at the open page. A fly stirred its wings softly in his ear. Read. What's the title, dear? Dover Beach. His mouth was numb. Now read in a nice clear voice and go slow. The room was blazing hot. He was all fire. He was all coldness. They sat in the middle of an empty desert with 3 chairs and him standing, swaying, and him waiting for Mrs. Phelps to stop straightening her dress hem, and Mrs. Bowles to take her fingers away from her hair. And then he began to read in a low, stumbling voice that grew firmer as he progressed from line to line, and his voice went out across the desert into the whiteness and around the 3 sitting women there in the great hot emptiness. The sea of faith was once too at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled, but now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges, drear and naked shingles of the world. The chairs creaked under the 3 women. Montag finished it out. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Mrs. Phelps was crying. The others in the middle of the desert watched her crying grow very loud as her face squeezed itself out of shape. They sat, not touching her, bewildered by her display. She sobbed uncontrollably. Montag himself was stunned and shaken. Shh, shh, said Mildred. You're all right, Clara. Now, Clara, snap out of it. Clara, what's wrong? I, sobbed Mrs. Phelps. Don't know. I just don't know. Miss Bowles stood up and glared at Montag. You see? I knew it. That's what I wanted to prove. I knew it would happen. I've always said poetry and tears, poetry and suicide and crying and awful feelings, poetry and sickness, all that mush. Now I've had it proved to me. You're nasty, Mr. Montag. You're nasty. Faber said, now. Montag felt himself turn and walk to the wall slot and drop the book in through the brass notch to the waiting flames. Silly words, silly awful, hurting words, said Mrs. Bowles. Why do people want to hurt people? Not enough hurt in the world? You've got to tease people with stuff like that? Clara, begged Mildred, pulling her arm. Come on, let's be cheery. You turn on the family now. Go ahead, let's laugh and be happy. Now stop crying. We'll have a party. No, said Mrs. Bowles. I'm trotting right straight home. You want to visit my house and my family? Well and good, but I won't come in this fireman's crazy house again in my lifetime. Go home. Montag fixed his eyes upon her quietly. Go home and think of your first husband divorced and your second husband killed in a jet and your third husband blowing his brains out. Go home and think of the dozen abortions you've had. Go home and think of that and your damned cesarean sections too and your children who hate your guts. Go home and think how it all happened and what did you ever do to stop it. Go home, he yelled, before I knock you down and kick you out the door. The door slammed and the house was empty. Montag stood alone in the winter weather. Parlor walls the color of dirty snow. All right, that's where we're going to stop this section. Waiting for you in Schoology is a quiz set up just like the BD speech test. All right, I listed some things that were revealed, and your job is to go through the text, and I provided a copy and pastable section. I've provided a copy and pastable version of this chunk of text there for you, so you don't have to be typing out any quotes. You could just scan and grab them, all right, and then pop them in the right slot on the quiz. Just like last time, I've had it set up so it allows me some flexibility. I certainly anticipate that there's more than one right answer for a lot of these, but the last one worked out pretty well, so I'm confident you guys will do just as well on this one. All right. All right, everything's in Schoology. Mr. C, he's out of here.